Good afternoon, Math 8 superstars. Mr. Fichette back again. This week we're talking about slope, how to identify slope, and the y-intercept from the actual linear equation, or the slope-intercept form as we call it. So, let's get started. I got a couple problems here that we're going to take a look at. So, before we do that though, we're going to do a little bit of review. So, up here, this is our slope-intercept form. We talked about this earlier in Ms. McKeach's class. Y equals mx plus b, right? So, for us to be able to write an equation that you see in questions 1 and 2, you got to understand what these pieces of the equation or this linear equation are. So this is a line. All this is a line equation, or a linear equation. That's what it is. It'll always make a line. And remember, like we reviewed before, if we look down here in these examples, these all have exponents of 1. That makes it a linear equation. We talked about that earlier. So let's go into this equation. Let's dig a little bit deeper in our review. So, think to yourself, what is the m? Right? The m, and if you thought correctly, it's our slope. Right? Our slope, which equals change in y over change in x, right? You also know that as rise over run. Okay, the next thing, the other important piece of information is the b value. The b value is what I like to call, and I'm going to draw just an arrow down here. Our b value is our y-intercept, right? Our y-intercept. That's our starting point, right? That's where the graph crosses the y-intercept. So if I were to draw a Cartesian plane or just an actual graph, you have your x and your y. And this right here is your y-axis. That's your y-axis. So where that line would cross the y-axis, in other words, if this was a line we were looking at, the y-axis would be here. I don't know what that point is, but that's where it would be. Okay, so y-intercept, another name for that, and I'll go back to orange, would be our starting point. All right? This is also called our starting point. That's where we're going to identify our slope. We're going to go to that starting point, and then we're going to figure out what our slope is from there. Here, we just have to identify two things. So we're going to go down to our first equation, and I'll change it to purple. And we have y equals 7 over 3x, or 7/3 x plus 5. So if you look up at our equation, our m is right here. So our slope, or our m, equals 7 over 3. You should be saying to yourself, is that a positive or negative slope? Oh, it's a positive, so it's a positive slope, right? So that would be a line that would be going this way, right? Puff, puff, positive, we'd be rising, right? Now, what's our y-intercept, or what's our starting point? So our starting point is our b value, right? So our b value is right here. So our b value, or our y-intercept, would be 5. If that's on a graph, it would be 0, 5. That's the point it would make up, right? So we identified those two things, right? So let me write that again. If we put in y equals mx plus b, and then I write the equation below it, you'll see how these line up. And they line up exactly as you see them, like Ms. McKeachik did today. So let's look at number 2. Number 2, this one should be easier. If we look at this, we look at y equals mx plus b up there. We know that our m is negative 2/5. So our m is going to equal negative 2/5. Right? And let me go back. That's not the negative 2 over 5. When we look over here, we have our b value, which is negative 2. That's also known as our starting point. That's negative 2. If we look at this line, you're looking at it's negative, so on a grid it would look like this. It'd be that nice flow downhill. Up here you'd be puff positive, going up. So that's slope and y-intercept from our slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, which we know is a linear equation. Remember, if you have any questions or concerns, please email myself or Ms. McKeechik at any time. We can go from there. Make sure you're watching these videos and you're checking the copy of the notes on Google Classroom. Everybody have a great day. See you later.